New discoveries from Challenger, one of history's most famous deep-sea expeditions.
They look quite ferocious. This species has never ever been seen before.
Natasha's searching for space dust on the roof.
I love feeling a bit like a Ghostbuster, which was the main attraction for me.
And there's a VIP visitor to the museum's bats.
Welcome to my kingdom.
Thank you.
Morning. Are you outside this morning? You right, Declan? Are you on donations first thing? Fabulous. Hi, Edmund, you okay?
It's 10 a.m. and duty manager Hattie is checking in with the museum's front of house team.
You ready?
For?
The day.
Oh, yeah.
Life. Life, Harry. Are you ready for life? Good. Oh, it's quite busy. Hundreds of people coming in right now, and we've got about 10,000 more to come, so it's going to be great. Awesome. Morning, hello.
With hundreds of visitors already on site, Hattie's off on her daily inspection round.
One of my most important jobs in the morning that I need to do before it gets too busy is make sure the T-Rex is fine. Morning, you're right. Yeah, good, thank you. A few weeks ago, it stopped working. A lot of the lights went off, and it really disappointed a lot of people. They were coming in the gallery and just looking really upset. You can hear the music, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's working. You just need to move in front of it. There we go, it's fine. So it's motion censored, so if no one moves in front of it, then you think it's dead. It's got motion sensors in the nostrils, which I found out recently, which I quite like. It's a really special job. There's not many places where you have people whose job it is to make sure a dinosaur is alive.
With the visitors heading off to see the museum's incredible galleries, housing everything from bears to bugs and birds, Ice Age mammal specialist Tori Herridge is heading behind the scenes. She's working on a project that's part of the museum's efforts to help save endangered species.
So these cupboards might look ordinary, but they're not. This is the museum's fossil mammal store, and these cupboards are all arranged geographically. We just passed Pakistan, here's the Mediterranean. Very quickly, you get into the fossil mammals of Britain, because we've got lots and lots of those. And this is Ice Age London. It screams Ice Age immediately because you've got woolly mammoth on Old Kent Road, reindeer, Buckingham Palace Road. I mean, it's like a monopoly board of Ice Age London.
These fossils were all found near the River Thames, where the animals lived between 125 and 40,000 years ago, roughly when the first modern humans came to Britain.
Here we have this beauty. It looks like a dragon, it's not. This is actually a woolly rhinoceros from Battersea Power Station. They found this when they were building it in 1873. And we know they were woolly because we have carcasses from Siberia with fur, and there's Ice Age art as well, with pictures of these creatures with great shaggy coats.
The woolly rhino weighed as much as 2,800 kilos and stood about 2 meters tall, like a small elephant.
With a big hump, but they had short legs, and they had this enormous horn. This rhinoceros was a bit like the white rhino, a grazer, and we know that from the shape of its skull. And it was really low slung, hanging low to the ground. Imagine that, running through central London.
But for some reason, these creatures started to die out.
30,000 years ago, just started to wink out. From covering like the majority of the northern hemisphere, you see them winking out. The woolly rhinos disappearing one by one till 13,000 years ago. Nothing left. And you just have to ask yourself, why does this happen?
Tori has been working on finding out why species go extinct so that we can help stop it happening again.
There are still rhinos in the world, but every single population is under immense pressure from humans, from their environment being changed, from climate change itself. And by looking at what happened to these creatures, we might be able to understand not only why these things affect these animals, but what we can do about it.
Today, the rhino population is in crisis, with some species down to under 100 animals left alive. And the museum urgently wants to do what it can before it's too late and the rhino is gone forever.
Welcome everybody to the Naturalist Museum.
Every day here in London, thousands of visitors file through the museum's doors to view the exhibits. With almost 30,000 objects to see, there's plenty to choose from. But incredibly, for every object on display, there are 3,000 more stored behind closed doors. So now, the museum is putting on a special exhibition of items never before seen in public. It's telling the amazing story of HMS Challenger, which made one of the greatest sea journeys of all time.
These are some of the original recording books from the Challenger.
And it's Andrea Hart's job to pull it all together. The Challenger's crew were at sea for years, sailing through some of the most violent waters on Earth.
It sailed in almost all of the world's oceans to find out what was living in them, their conditions. This was on a global level that had never been undertaken before.
In 1872, at the height of Queen Victoria's reign, the Challenger set sail from Sheerness in Kent. For the next 4 years, its crew of over 200 faced storms, icebergs, and food shortages as they sailed over 80,000 miles in the Atlantic, Antarctic, and Pacific Oceans.
What we are looking to do is to tell the story of the expedition. They had no assistance from the technology that we would have today, so very manual, very arduous. We are incredibly lucky to have letters, as well as some daily journals.
By the time the Challenger docked triumphantly back in the UK 4 years later, it wasn't only notebooks and journals that returned. Its hold was full of thousands of previously unknown marine creatures.
Some people say it smells fishy in here, but I don't notice it.
Carefully preserved in jars to this day and stored in the museum's tank room, the collection is full of the weird and wonderful from many expeditions. From the anglerfish that lives over 1,000 meters down to the giant squid that can grow over 12 meters. And it's James McLean's job to look after them. They are some of the museum's rarest and ugliest specimens.
We have a huge variety of different things. Some lovely porbeagle shark heads there.
There are 2,000 fish and larger sea creatures stored here.
We quite often call them pickled specimens because I guess they are sort of preserved in a fluid. We never ever would use vinegar. We like ethanol and water.
Some of the creatures from the Challenger expedition will go on display. So James needs to make sure that they are in top condition.
So this specimen, because of its size, is called the obese dragonfish, and they look quite ferocious. And that's the lure there, a little barbel underneath their chin, which will have a glowing lure at the end. And that's what they use to attract their prey. When this specimen was brought back, this species had never ever been seen before.
The expedition rewrote the rule book. It proved that the ocean beds were not covered in ice and also that creatures could live almost 5 kilometers below the surface. And its sea temperature readings are still used today as scientists check how our oceans have warmed up over the last 150 years.
But the Challenger expedition was amazing. It discovered that there was this strange chain of underwater mountains that went right down the middle of the Atlantic. When they brought back the news, some people thought it was evidence that they'd discovered Atlantis.
And when they sailed through the Pacific Ocean, they made another historic discovery.
They also found out that the ocean is very, very deep. It's over 8,000 meters deep. And just 50 miles away from where they were at that site is actually the deepest known point of the ocean, and that is now called Challenger Deep.
So great was its importance that 100 years later, NASA named its space shuttle in honor of the Challenger. In the museum's backroom stores, space expert Natasha Almeida is on the hunt for something tiny brought back by the Challenger. While dredging the deep ocean, as well as strange creatures, the ship also came across some visitors from outer space. Meteorites.
What's really exciting about working with collections of meteorites is there's so much that we have learned from them. They told us the age of the sun. They've told us that the moon used to be a part of the earth. And the exciting thing is, what is there still to be found out?
Meteorites may have expanded our understanding of the solar system, but if you think they're all huge rocks from space, just look at what the Challenger found.
So here they are. This is the first ever collection of micrometeorites. They're very small, but there are tiny little micrometeorites inside there. This is such an exciting thing to hold. It's something that most scientists, when they visit the collection, they really love to see. It's a first for the museum, it was a first for the world.
When the Challenger collected samples of silt from the bottom of the Pacific, they found micrometeorites, tiny specks of space dust the size of a grain of salt. And they're very different from the museum's other meteorite specimens.
This is a pallasite meteorite.
This meteorite landed in Argentina over 70 years ago, weighed 3/4 of a ton, and staggeringly is over 4.5 billion years old.
This one's been cut and then polished, so it looks really nice and smooth. So it's got iron metal, and then the crystals here are really beautiful specimens. Look at that.
These meteorites all have one thing in common. They've survived travelling many millions of miles of space to get here.
So this is actually a volcanic rock from Mars. It used to be part of a lava flow that would have erupted about 1.4 billion years ago. This is definitely one of the jewels in the collection.
The micrometeorites will go on display as part of the Challenger exhibition. But Natasha wants to see if she can find some herself, in the most unlikely of locations, the museum's roof. Every year, the Natural History Museum welcomes over 5 million visitors. But today, the staff are preparing for one visitor in particular, who was a regular on our TV screens. As Boris Johnson's top science advisor, Sir Patrick Vallance became a household name during the COVID pandemic.
When you make a move, you have to go earlier than you think you want to. You have to go harder than you think you want to.
But now he's got a new job as chairman of the Natural History Museum's trustees. And today he's come to have a good look around with museum director Doug Gurr. And there's one mammal Sir Patrick's especially keen to see: bats.
Bats are super interesting. How could you not fall in love with this guy? Have you looked at his pretty face? This one is close to my heart because I was involved in the description of the species. Bats are quite poorly understood. I fear that we are losing more species that are not known to science yet. And by the time that we realize, they'll be gone.
In the museum's very own bat cave are over 40,000 specimens, presided over by Roberto Portela Miguez.
Welcome to my kingdom.
Thank you.
We have a collection that spans over 300 years, but we are revisiting and reassessing with modern techniques. And actually, we were able to determine that this is a different species from what it was labeled as.
Really?
So a lot of these labels obviously date from the 19th century and 18th centuries.
The museum's latest work reveals new evidence of particular interest to Sir Patrick.
Some of these bats are centuries old and have been detected to have a strain of the coronavirus that is very similar to the one that affected humans and caused the global pandemic.
So in those samples, you've actually picked up coronavirus
Yes.
RNA. Okay.
Which is extraordinary.
Amazing.
Incredibly, several bat species were able to carry a type of coronavirus without getting sick. But how bat coronavirus made the jump to being the virus that caused the pandemic is still unknown. So the museum is putting its entire collection of 80 million specimens online for everyone to use. They hope that the bat samples will help scientists around the world find out more about how COVID started and how it was transmitted.
What you're now seeing here is Fedra taking detailed shots. And you can see that it's fantastic resolution.
Oh, look at that.
That's extraordinary.
And you can see the beautiful nose leaf structure.
That's amazing. When you see that, you can understand why you've fallen in love with them.
Yes, and they're beautiful.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. Thank you. The idea you can take a tissue sample and start to see how have bats lived with coronavirus for a very long time is an extraordinary process. The fact is that it's not the bat, it's the interaction between us and the bats and the way we interact with nature.
With the boss's visit over, there's another bat scan for Roberto to do.
The key thing about the CT scan is that it allows you to peel off all the different tissues until you get to the skull itself. And if we wanted to, we could also go into the nostrils of the bat and see all the bones within the nose, which are paper thin and very small, and now we're going to come out through their mouth. So this is being playful, but there is good science being done with all this information.
For Roberto, studying bats is his own small step in helping save planet Earth.
There is a planetary emergency, and it worries me the shape of the planet that we will leave to future generations. And so if I can make a difference by letting people know about the species that are out there, I think that's my mission, and that's what keeps me coming back every day to this place.
Hello, team leader. This is Foxtrot 5, Ava.
Duty manager Hattie is back on her inspection round.
Another one of my important jobs is making sure all the elevators are working so that people can get safely up to the upper floors if they have any accessibility needs. Very simple job, you just need to check that they're working. Apparently, some of the elevators here at the museum are haunted. I've heard a couple different stories. Apparently in the basement there was a morgue, apparently there was a hospital, and I have heard a story of a security guard and the elevator came down on its own accord, opened, and they saw someone kind of crawl out of it and they were covered in bandages. Yeah, don't know if I believe that one, but I want to. She's working. Lift is working, it's fine, no ghosts running out of it, all good.
Doors closing.
6 p.m. and the end of the day for the museum. As the great doors close, you'd think it'd all go quiet. But you'd be wrong, because tonight there's no rest for the wicked. It's Halloween, and the museum is throwing a party.
We are special agents. We just got a call that there might be some alien activity happening.
My dream wasn't to be an astronaut, but here I am, fulfilling someone else's dream, and I feel like I'm doing it quite well.
The museum comes back to life with almost 1,000 paying visitors arriving in fancy dress. And it's Robbie Watts' job to make sure it's no horror show.
A lot of people have been saying, "What are you going to dress up as, Robbie?" And I'm like, "That's the least of my worries right now. I've got a lot to do." But I think it's a really great way of engaging the public. We've got a lot to offer here in terms of spooky stuff. I think the building is quite gothic itself. It can be quite a creepy place.
Curator John Ablett has brought along some highlights from his cabinet of horrors.
This is the wonderfully named vampire squid from hell. When something tries to eat it, they actually shoot out glow-in-the-dark mucus, and the thought being that this slime temporarily blind anything that's looking for it, distract them, and this can slowly blob off into the distance.
But you can't have Halloween without bats. And bat expert Stephanie Holt is on hand to stick up for this misunderstood little mammal.
So this is our vampire bat. Well, there are only 3 species of vampire in the world. 1 feeds on birds and 2 that feed on mammals. It's got these very fine needle sharp teeth. It'll make a sharp incision with those incisors and then lick the blood. So they don't suck blood, they lap at the blood. Bats are not evil at all. They will feed starving bats who haven't fed well with blood that they regurgitate, even if it's not one that's related to them at all, which is really unusual.
Andrea's exhibition on the amazing voyage of the deep-sea explorer ship the Challenger is now taking shape. But as well as the discoveries, she wants to know how tough life was for the crew who set sail 150 years ago.
So help me, Bob, I'm bully in the alley. Way, bully in the alley. Help me.
And one person who could provide a clue is Philip Pearson. He's the great-grandson of the ship's coal stoker, and he keeps the spirit of the Challenger alive, singing sea shanties.
My great-grandfather, Charlie Collins, was something of a mythical figure in our family. He joined the Navy 14 years old, and 10 years later, he signed on the Challenger. I'm fascinated by his story. Who wouldn't be if you had an ancestor who was part of a world-famous expedition?
Philip has come to the museum to meet Andrea. She wants to find out more about his great-grandfather.
Hello, welcome to the museum. Very nice to meet you.
You too.
Tell me a little bit more about your Charlie.
Well, Charlie, he ran away to sea against his father's wishes.
Philip has only ever seen one photo of his great-grandfather. He's hoping Andrea has some more.
Here we've got the captain and a few more crew ones here.
But as they search, one thing becomes clear.
There aren't many pictures of the sailors. I can't find Charlie.
No, it tended to be more the officers, didn't it?
But Andrea does have something for Philip, original letters by the boat's steward. And they shed light on what life was like below decks for his great-grandfather.
I believe these letters are around Christmas time. Here, the captain gave everyone of the ship's company 1/3 of a pint of sherry, and very good wine it was.
It's extraordinary.
Despite a relatively merry Christmas, the letters detail how tough conditions were. And as the ship sailed towards Antarctica, the crew were often hungry. They hunted local wildlife, including penguins. Then, in early 1874, the Challenger captured something remarkable for the history books.
They are some of the first photographs of icebergs that were captured in the Antarctic. In Matkin's letters, they started off being something of a fascinating thing to observe, describing them as Gothic cathedrals and haystacks. But then by the end of it, he was quite happy to see the back of them.
The ship was away for over 4 years, and when it arrived back in England, its crew and what they had achieved were famous.
When Charlie died in 1932, He was the last surviving member of the Challenger crew, and there was the grand procession through town because it was such a famous expedition.
Fantastic.
Charlie left something for Philip, which he's brought along today.
These here, in my little treasure chest, are the buttons from his jacket. And they show a ship's anchor.
That's fantastic. His face.
It's been wonderful to see the original letters and to reimagine from those dry books just what it was really like to be working at sea as well as being a scientist. This is a group of sailors, and that's Charlie.
It's wonderful hearing about Philip and his great-grandfather, seeing it through the eyes of the crew members that, at the end of the day, were the working horses. They made the expedition possible.
Ancient mammal expert Tori has seen how the British woolly rhino became extinct 13,000 years ago. Now she's worried about rhinos today that also face extinction. There are fewer than 28,000 left.
Daisy?
Hi, Tori. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
In The Lost Rhino, a new exhibition at the museum, Alexandra Daisy Ginsberg explores our relationship with this beautiful, ancient and now endangered species.
I was expecting a rhino.
Well, this is a rhino. This is, well, part of a rhino. These are beating heart cells or heart muscle cells from a northern white rhino called Angalifu, who died in 2014. So what we're seeing is, you could say, his heartbeat.
Angalifu lived out his days in an American zoo. And now, tragically, there are no more male northern white rhinos left alive. So the species is heading for extinction. This image of Angalifu's beating heart is a reminder of what we have lost.
The sounds are taken from footage of the last 8 northern white rhinos. They have very specific calls and noises, and grunts and pants and squeaks.
This is an extraordinary, life-sized, digital recreation of a northern white rhino that paces endlessly around.
So is this the closest you've been to a rhino?
Yes. It's kind of menacing because of the noise, and the pacing feels quite menacing, actually. But I still want to get closer, and I kind of want to press my sort of nose up against the glass and interact with it, because I feel like it's looking at me.
I'm really happy to hear that, because that's exactly what I want people to feel. The rhino looks us in the eye at the end, just before it disappears. And there's this moment of connection, and we have to look at ourselves and think about our own behaviours. And that's really at the heart of this for me.
If rhinos vanish from the natural world, what are we going to be left with?
Okay, we've got a rhino. This is familiar. It's a rhinoceros.
I knew you were going to say that. Although it was a real rhino, it's just the skin now. But it gets us back to this question of, well, what is a rhino? This is what I think of when I think of a rhino, as this big animal that teaches me what it's like to be near a rhino, and to remember that it's not just humans in the world that are important.
Tragically, the northern white rhino can't be saved. But if we do something now, it's not too late for other members of this majestic family of creatures.
One of the things about this whole exhibition that actually brings a sense of hope to me is that I know when I'm looking in this case that I'm looking at a southern white rhino.
At around 18,000, numbers of the southern white are holding steady, and it's the only one of the 5 rhino species that is not at threat of extinction.
It has come back from the brink of extinction, and it tells us, in its story, that it isn't hopeless. If you act now for species that are still with us, it is not a doomed situation, but you have to act.
Natasha is on a mission to find micrometeorites, tiny particles that have crashed to Earth from outer space. And armed with a vacuum cleaner, somewhat surprisingly, she's heading for the museum's roof.
It is sunny today.
Incredibly, over 5,000 tons of micrometeorites land on Earth a year.
Can you switch me on?
But because they are so small, and the amount of other dust that is around, they are very hard to find.
The estates team, when I asked them if I could have access, they actually didn't believe me. But the joke's going to be on them because we'll end up with 4.5 billion-year-old rocks in our collection.
The micrometeorites may have sat undisturbed for years on the museum's large flat roof, among the bird poo and grime.
Do I enjoy hoovering? No. I have a 19-month-old son. I do it quite a lot at home. But I love feeling a bit like a Ghostbuster, which was the main attraction for me. That looks like good stuff. Where I say good stuff is there's accumulation of what looks like particulate matter in which we are hoping there'll be some micrometeorites. I need someone with longer arms. Maybe this is a bit that you should do, Matthias. Matthias. Yeah, you missed a spot. Okay, how much did we get? Let's have a quick look. Okay, quite a bit. Yeah. Okay, ready? Yep.
Once she's back inside, Natasha will discover if the museum roof has been the lucky recipient of some of the tons of micrometeorites that have landed in Britain. If you think you've found gold on the beach or a precious dinosaur tooth in the garden, the museum has a crack team of experts, like Ben Dixon, who can help identify them. Ben and his colleagues sort the gems from the junk in all manner of mysterious objects.
I was always interested as a kid. I got into geology late, though. It's just sort of remarkable when you come upon something, because more than it's just a rock. Come on, folks.
Today, teacher Andy Copsey is hoping Ben can identify a fossil he found on the Essex coast.
Oh, wow. Hello. How are you doing? How are you doing?
We're a group from Cape.
And he's brought the class with him.
We found a fossil.
A fossil?
We're trying to identify.
Well, you came to the right place.
Thank you very
so
much.
come on in.
There's a few
All of you?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Come on in. Here we go. Let me hold the door for you guys. Thank you. So, where did you find it? Where is this?
So, just a bit of history. So we're down at Holland-on-Sea in Essex, and I've been pulling out all kinds of finds, but that was different. That's different to the other stuff we found there.
Andy thinks this could be some kind of ancient reptile fossil.
We can't work out whether it's some kind of snake or something like that, or crocodilian.
I assume you've seen reptile scales, and there's, if you look at them, they sort of have a certain symmetry to them. So, I mean, when they fossilize, and you can see certain patterns that are uniform.
Ben isn't exactly sure what this is. He needs to do more digging, and he knows just the person to help. Fossil expert Tim Ewan. He's used to sorting out the fossils from the fakes.
The label says spurious fossils, and that's because it's full of specimens trying to be fossils but aren't actually. They were made a collection over a couple of years, but this one here is quite a nice one. I think most people would just say it's a fossilised foot, a human foot. This was found in chalk, so this is from the Cretaceous. And some people might say it's evidence of humans and dinosaurs living together. But actually, this is just the flint nodule. And then probably my personal favourite is the calf, which is very sort of Salvador Dali-esque calf, I admit. But you can see it's got these nice horns, nice little eyes, and even a little smiley face from a happy calf. But no, this is actually, again, just a piece of flint. Our eyes recognise the shapes and patterns as though they are actually fossils.
After a bit more detective work, Ben still isn't completely sure what the rock is. And he's wondering if it might be one for Tim's drawer. So he's come for a second opinion.
have this curious specimen here from an inquirer came in, but I'm a little uncertain, so I want to get your opinion on it.
Okay. What data do you have on it? Where's it from?
It's from the Thames estuary, so Holland-on-Sea.
I mean, I could see someone would look at that and think, oh gosh, it's going to be like a dinosaur skin or you know, a snake skin or something like that. So.
Exactly.
Close examination reveals the answer.
Yeah, it's got quite a distinctive texture to it, isn't it? Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I've got this specimen here, which is a nice fish fossil, and you can see it looks superficially quite similar. So, yeah, I don't think it's a fossil as such. It's just like an ironstone nodule in clay.
Well, thank you very much, Tim.
Right, so you need to wear a jacket for this one because it's a bit of a dirty job.
Natasha collected a bag of dirt and grime after vacuuming the museum's roof. Now she has to sift through it to see if she's found a micrometeorite.
This is much more enjoyable than washing the dishes. A little bit smellier. It basically just looks like mud. You can't tell if there's a micrometeorite in there or not.
She's got Matthias from the University of Kent on hand. He's studied micrometeorites for 15 years and is helping her identify these tiny particles of space dust. But it's a bit like looking for a needle in a haystack.
If you see a hole on the particles, it's probably not a micrometeorite.
Stop dashing all my hopes, Matthias.
Sorry.
The one that I've put in the middle here, it looks like a potential, so fingers crossed. Do you reckon? Could be?
No. Sorry.
It's all right. Okay, keep going.
It's not something you can do in an afternoon. You have to spend 100 hours before you can find one. So, yes, work.
Okay, it's in the middle, yes. It's on the edge of this, like, debris there. Come on, come on, come on. Come on. Maybe?
Wait.
No way.
Actually, a cool candidate. So good. It's fun if you want.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Well done. That's great. It's one thing to say, micrometeorites fall everywhere and you can find them on your roof and that kind of thing, but it's really exciting to actually find one. They all add to our understanding of the solar system. Every single one is another little piece of the puzzle.
After months of planning, the exhibits from the Challenger have been sorted, sifted and selected. It's a moment of pride for exhibition curator Andrea.
This one here in particular has got a wonderful image of some deep-sea anglerfishes that were probably unknown at the time. I absolutely love being able to bring the collections out, put them on display, and also just because they are just so spectacularly beautiful, it's wonderful to be able to share that with others.
Today, there's an extra special visitor. Philip, the great-grandson of the ship stoker Charlie. And he's brought his own children, Aidan and Anya, along to see something of the incredible voyage that their great-great-grandfather made.
Your great-great-grandfather is no doubt down in the hold shoveling coal too.
Shoveling away.
Shoveling away.
Oh.
Without the steam engine, they couldn't have done the science because they needed the steam engine to get about and stand still in the busy ocean.
It's just really amazing seeing like stuff that we have like a personal family connection to in the museum. Like it's really surreal.
Thanks to the stories passed down to him as a child, Philip can appreciate the sacrifices the crew made.
It kind of brings the whole thing oddly to life, even though it was 150 years ago. It's a great exhibition.